It's been a while, and I'm so happy to be back doing another fabulous confabulation. And we are starting off strong because today I have Rachel Doyle with me, and she is the founder of GlamourGals, which is a not for profit organization that bridges generational gaps and empowers connection. And GlamourGals volunteers spend time at senior homes and provide makeovers to the elders. And it's such a beautiful thing. I got the opportunity to do it once, and I was like, I need to talk to Rachel. So hi Rachel, welcome.
Hello, it's so great to be on here, and I'm so flattered to be like your first of 2024.
Yes,
So
we're starting
that's been
strong.
fun.
When you were a teenager, you created Glamour Girls. So what were the steps you took to do that?
I think there was definitely quite a few. I looking back, I and it didn't happen overnight either. I remember thinking about creating it in the summer of this is gonna so date me, 1999.
What?
Like the 90s, 1999. And, we didn't have our first Glamour Gals official makeover. And that was with myself and two of my friends from homeroom until January of 2000.
Oh
So
wow.
between August of 1999 and January of 2000, I remember I put together this loose like program outline, like what to expect. And I brought this like one-page typed information to a local senior home. And I walked in to pitch the activities director. And she pretty much stopped me and was like, who's your corporate sponsor and who's the adult in charge? And I was like, can I get back to you? And I like walked myself out back to like my mom's minivan in the parking lot. And I'm like, you're an adult. Will you be like the adult in charge? Because I
Right.
haven't like talked to a teacher or anything like
Right.
that. And again, dating me, I had no idea what like a corporate sponsor was.
Mhm.
But I said, well, I know that there's businesses in the yellow pages. That's like this really
Yeah,
thick
yeah. I
yellow,
know.
but I'm like, oh, I know
I
it. It's like,
know a little
and
something.
I literally like opened up the yellow pages and started calling companies to donate products for like the Glamour Gals makeover experience. So
Wow.
like literally there was definitely some key moments that happened. There was some organization on my part. And then there was definitely this thought process that like, okay, I'll just figure it out.
Yeah.
Like I don't know the answer, I'll get the answer.
And I think that's a beautiful mindset because I think in today's age, like everyone has an idea, has a dream, but because they don't have the step by step, they're like, I can't do it. It's too big, it's too much. But going with that, I'll just figure it out mindset can really get you places because like you're just open to whatever's to come. So I commend you on that. That's awesome. First, it started out as a group, as a club, and then you made it a not for profit. And so I'm sure there were many different types of challenges doing that. Can you name a few and how you overcame those challenges? Who was your biggest support system? I know that's like a three in one question, but all of that.
So I think as an entrepreneur, the mindset of how you approach a challenge has not changed for me as someone when I was in high school, this idea of just figuring it out. I think now, 2 decades later, it's become more of like processes that I've created or steps or platforms that I've built for other people to figure out challenges easily or help them work through the daily challenges as an entrepreneur. I've never shied away from challenge. So I think having the right mindset is half the battle. Procrastination is your worst enemy when it comes to, and that is like the first thing we all lean back on.
Yeah.
I can get it done tomorrow. I can get it done tomorrow. And then you're like, shoot, the deadline is in 2 hours. And then you get in this adrenaline mode. And yes, that sometimes works for like quick creative things, but other times you really need to put in the time and build the right foundations in order to solve the problem. So, for example, as a nonprofit, we apply for grants and they give you this whole long list of things you need to do for that grant and a date. They're really clear about it.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that the best way to get ahead of that is whatever you can cross off your list. By the way, this goes for planning in person or even hybrid or virtual events as well.
Okay.
Anything you can get done today for that event, that grant, get it done, because then when you get closer to the deadline, it's all about, what went wrong, what's not going as planned, and crisis mode to deal with it. And if you're still checking off things that you could have checked off weeks or months ago, that's where the stress comes in. It's not necessarily from the crisis, it's because you didn't make sure you put in the time up front and just got that stuff done. You procrastinated and that's why you didn't make it there, and now you're all stressed out.
Yeah.
I think it's all about, again, how you move through those challenges, being excited as an entrepreneur. You just have to be excited by a challenge.
Yeah. So basically, really loving what you do and staying committed to that, I think
Yeah,
is,
I think as an entrepreneur, for
yeah.
sure, that is a number one thing that, and a lot of people are not, and that's okay. And you can be successful outside of the entrepreneurial world. But I think that's the first thing you really need to recognize yourself if you're going to build something on your own, is that resilience and that excitement for challenges. And it's going to come up daily. It could come up at any moment, probably the worst planned moment, 7 p.m. on a Friday of a holiday weekend.
Oh.
That's when you got to be ready for stuff to hit the fan.
Yeah. Do, do you and did you have a support system to fall back on when those challenges were going on?
No, I think I definitely can thank my family. I'm very blessed in that my older brother is a great older brother that, as a younger sister, he was always like, let me help you out, Rachel. Let me help
Oh,
you.
that's
He
sweet.
is what I call the Uber connector. And, I would say supportive parents, in the sense of they maybe didn't have tons of financial resources,
Mhm.
but they always were there to say, can I pick you up? Can I drop you off? Can I help you sit at the kitchen table and brainstorm a solution? Even if it's not, it's how you get to the solution and not the solution. My dad is like the professor. He'll come with bread and I'm like, just give me the answer. Just give me. And he's like,
Oh,
no, it's better for you to learn it. And you're like,
right.
educated. Later on, as my network grew in college, I really looked to, I actively sought after more of that wisdom or resources that I didn't have from my family. And I created an advisory council. And I looked for people who were smarter and had more expertise than myself. And I pitched them to be a part of the organization. And I remember hosting my very first advisory council meeting, and it was in between classes at Cornell University, and the only quiet place I could find was a payphone telephone booth
Oh my
in
God.
a supply closet in the hall
Wow.
of the school. So in between classes, I was jumping into this. It was like me and the janitor. You come in and get a mop, being like, I didn't even know there was a telephone in here. And I remember doing my calls on freeconferencecall.com, and
Wow.
we would call in, and you just found a way. And, they had no idea I was standing in a supply closet in between classes, but I had my agenda. I was organized. I brought all the things that I could to them. And then, I think that made them feel supported and welcomed and excited. And then they were able to give me back all the things I needed to answer those tough questions and those problems.
That's awesome. You're like the true definition of a go-getter. Like you made it happen, you know? I love that. It's inspiring. And also I want to say I met your mom and she is absolutely
Oh,
wonderful. She raves about you. And yeah, I think number one is believing in yourself, but then number two is definitely having that strong foundation of a support system. Some people aren't fortunate to have that, some people are, but I think it's a wonderful step when you are trying to pursue something. So that's awesome.
I always recruited people with the idea that first and foremost, they have a genuine interest in the success of the mission, or even sometimes me personally, or depending on what role, I'm hoping that they fill. but it's never, I mean, listen, deep pockets are always helpful in any, like,
Yeah, of
in
course. I
any
mean,
business.
I'm
Let's
not,
just
yeah,
put that aside.
let's just say
But,
that.
but for relationships to last, to
Yes.
not just be a one and done, there has to be that genuine interest in the success
Mhm.
of the entity.
Moving on, what is a typical day for Rachel?
I would say once it becomes typical, I'm waiting for something to go wrong. Because
Mm,
clearly I'm getting too comfortable. You
okay.
know, if I feel like there is too much of like repetitive need, like for me, I think that if it's too repetitive or too predictable, I myself as the leader am not doing the visionary planning or the being two steps ahead of the group. Now, I think that for some people having a typical day, that's really important in your role because you got to check off these lists of things to get to certain goals. But as a leader, the typical day actually needs to be pretty atypical because you want to start working on things that aren't necessarily necessary for that moment, that week, that month. You want to keep thinking about the vision 6 months, 1 year, that new business contact that you want to bring into it, to have a pitch call that you probably are going to get rejected on, or an email that you won't get answered, or that DM you slide into that who knows who's seeing that,
Right.
or and I've done all of those things before, and there's days where I was like, oh, I've taken a lot of hits today. I think I should take a walk around the block, you know and I think that helps with like creativity. It also, for me, I think because a lot of the times I work virtually with my team, it's so important for it not to be too too regular in that sense. Where I think the only typical thing is that I make sure that I'm always on a video call with the office
Okay.
or my program manager at least once a day on a
Okay.
working day. Unless there's an extenuating circumstance, we've made it a priority. And actually looking back as someone who I personally am a lot of times in a virtual office, which actually makes sense for the organization in a lot of different ways, both financially, to not have to have like a separate office in New York City.
Yeah.
Um, Also, I'm constantly talking or moving around or speaking engagements or things that are like all over the place. So um, it's important to have that connection with the team. So making sure that I'm on like a video call, at least with my program manager. That was like a New Year's resolution we made too. Sort of like we
Yeah.
can't miss our calls.
Right. No, that's awesome because I often hear stories of, organizations who don't, who are not in touch with their boss or, the founder. Oftentimes they're
My
like, yeah,
goodness.
I don't really know them. Like,
Yeah, there
have a
were during the
personal
pandemic.
connection.
I mean, during the pandemic, people were like, it's been about a month that I have not seen my my
Right.
boss.
They're like, we don't know where they
That's,
are.
I mean, I think maybe I've taken it to the other degree where I feel like sometimes I live in my little pink box.
They're like, oh, we see Rachel every day. No.
Yeah.
No.
But I think it's also good. It makes you feel connected. It definitely makes you think about like, oh my goodness, the fine lines, and like, should I get Invisalign and my teeth should be whiter? Like, I'm
Never.
not saying staring into the Zoom is always the greatest thing, but I think it is important to keep, the relationships and things like that.
I want to dive deeper into you talking about your atypical days because I love that. I think that's very interesting, and I've never heard people talk of when I ask that question, they're like, "Oh yes, so this is what it is. It's this, this, this." So do you mean that like every day you are constantly thinking of um, another way to progress Glamour Gals, or like are you constantly reaching out to new people? Like I know it's a broad question, but like what does that specifically mean?
I think there are, I would say, some like work habits that I do that are repetitive. Like
Mhm.
I really try both for like work-life balance, for to make things more productive in conversations. So things that I would do ongoing would be making sure that if there's like an agenda or a document that's being cited for a meeting, that always are like I prep for my meetings like for the next day. The second thing is I stopped taking calls at a certain time because I am now a mom, and at some point your home office, like you can't control
Yeah.
around you. And I used to get like super stressed out when I just kept booking these late calls. And then I went, if I can just bring the calls earlier, I won't have that stress and I'll be just as productive. It just means I have to organize my calendar smart.
No
Now,
boundaries.
it was like work-life balance after 40 years.
Yeah.
And then atypical would definitely be thinking about the larger, broader topics that will help the organization continue if there is a crisis. So, for example, how that manifested. Pandemic hits, March 2020. So many organizations just like closed down after a month because the revenues went to zero, their programs shut down. Now, I was no Bill Gates knowing that there would be a global pandemic in terms of like the germs.
Mm-hmm.
But for me as a founder, I always said, God forbid something happened to me. What would the organization do without Rachel? Like suddenly.
Yeah.
And so without even knowing it, I'd actually put into play like a crisis plan. And
Wow.
so we had financial backing that was in place that allowed us that when the crisis hit, we actually went into overdrive of planning and figuring out how to navigate through it versus being like, oh my God, we need to pay our employees. How do we survive financially? And because of that planning and that atypical, like thinking ahead, I mean, do you think every day, like, what would happen if I got hit by a bus and I wasn't here tomorrow?
No.
Maybe to my detriment as a leader. But, you know, I had those kind of like crazy, difficult thoughts and had start to put into place like, you know, physical manifestations that would get us through moments like that. And when that moment did happen for another reason, we were so prepared, it allowed us to actually be super creative, harness all this power of people that were at home or maybe not in their jobs for a moment, be it a month, a year, or whatever, and then create a whole new type of programming that carried us through the pandemic and after, won awards, and that's our My Dear Friend card writing program that has now engaged thousands of new volunteers, that has raised, you know, thousands of dollars for the organization to fund our traditional chapter, you know, leadership and chapter intergenerational service programming, and allowed us to reach seniors in all 50 states who are isolated. So that's where your atypical day
Oh,
or
I
atypical.
love that. Thank you for explaining that because I feel like that will help other people who have, businesses and me too, think ahead on those type of things. Because I feel like doing that creates more of a safe work environment too, because then you're not putting all of that stress of when things switch up on the people who work for you. So I think that's very interesting. It's a great point and something that I will definitely be thinking about in the future. So I know you've been doing Glamour Gals for a while, and I want to know a specific story about a time you visited a senior home, or you volunteered yourself, or you were watching the volunteers, and you had a moment where you were like, yeah, this is really is positively affecting people. Any story like with someone from the senior home or volunteer that you could share?
Absolutely. You know, I think back to when I first started volunteering in high school, I went to a bunch of different senior homes, and one of the senior homes that was in my rotation, I had met a woman named Claire. And back in the day, we would take Polaroids after the makeovers, which I feel like Polaroids has a thing now. It all came back.
Yeah, bring it back.
There was a time where there was no Polaroids or
Yeah.
whatnot. Anyway, so I had walked into the makeover and I introduced myself to Claire and then recognized, I'm like, oh, Claire, you're back. And she was like, no, 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 this is my first time. And I was like, Claire, I saw you like last week or last month. And she was insistent that I, hadn't seen her. And as a teenager, um, you know, I don't think I knew about like Alzheimer's or dementia or anything like that. I feel like even 20, 30 years ago, like people didn't even know that existed, like it wasn't in terminology. So as a teenager, I wouldn't have known that. But on top of it, I busted out my binder, which, oh my God, the dorkiness of what that sounds like. The
You're like,
binder
no, no,
picture.
no.
And I was like, Claire, look, that's us from last month. And you know what she did? She turned to me and was like, I just wanted another makeover. And I was like, of course you can. You're welcome every time. Like it's not like a one-time thing. But what was really cute about it was that, she wasn't forgetful. She was like trying to pull one over on me. And she
Right.
did so much that she wanted to come back, but she thought she wasn't allowed, or it was only this special thing that happens once. And I think it just showed me how special it is to people if they're willing to like trick you to like keep getting them. There was another woman also when I was in high school, when I was volunteering, and she was not excited to be at the makeover, and she actually seemed depressed. I was a teenager, so I would say she just looked really unhappy. And I kept checking with the activities director, being like, does Faye want to be here? Like, is this okay? She's like, no, 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 keep doing what you're doing. And I remember like dancing circles around this woman and, going back home and later that night being at my dinner table, kind of recounting the failure of the day. This woman didn't smile. I wasn't even sure she enjoyed it. And the phone rang, and it was actually the activities director on the phone calling for me. And of course, I thought I was like in trouble or I did something wrong, or Faye is now like reporting me to the activities director. And instead, she shared with me that Faye had been severely depressed. So that sadness I saw was like a clinical depression, but she had stopped eating because of that. And then after the makeover experience, she started eating again. And she wanted to call me and tell me that, Faye had started eating again.
Wow.
That moment is a moment that really, it probably changed my life in some way, because I saw the impact that an hour of my time, where me as a teenager leaving it was all about me thinking, oh, I failed. I didn't make her smile. Me, like I did something wrong. GlamourGals is a failure. But it took me out of me and said, wow, it was for someone else. And you're not always going to get the same reaction. You're not always going to get that smiley, like, you made my life all better. And sometimes it does take special people like that activities director, who a call like that is not common, doesn't happen to most. And I was lucky enough, I think, to receive it. So that way I could really understand how important the work we were doing, was, and to continue it.
Yeah, that definitely makes you sit back and be like, I have to keep going. I feel like, because even though it wasn't like she wasn't like in your face, like, wow, I love this. Like, it helped her tremendously in something that she was deeply going through, and I think that's moving.
For me, it also hit home because, GlamourGals, I started it in honor of my grandmother.
Right.
And my grandmother, who it's an honor for, actually, she had stopped eating towards the end of her life.
Wow. So then that really like hit home for you.
And the idea that almost like a stranger that I met and was, talking to them, engaging with them, maybe not getting what I wanted or needed from the conversation, was giving them what they needed for like a will to live.
Yeah.
And again, this is all reflecting back on these
Right.
moments. I think as a teenager, you don't always know or have time or really think about these things. And I think that's also another thing about what makes GlamourGals so special, is that, we provide a platform and opportunities for young people to reflect on their experiences. And that might be their online journaling that we have. And it's not mandatory, but if people are willing to do it, I think that they'll find at the end of the month or end of the year, or even the end of 4 years, if they start as a freshman, they're really grateful that they were able to see and do that, because, even just to capture these moments and then have the opportunity to reflect on it, I think that's how like real impact, real change is made. It's service, reflection, go out and do service again, keep doing it, repeat, 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 then go back and read those reflections and see, this line of growth or transformation or a theme or challenge or whatever it is. And just like if you want to get something done, the first thing you want to do is like write it down and be accountable to it.
So is Glamour Gals only for teenagers and college students? Because I volunteered once while I was in college, but I would love to like still be involved, and I'm sure there are many young adults who would love to be a part of Glamour Gals in some shape, way, or form. And so, are there those opportunities, or is it strictly focused on younger students?
Absolutely. We love to be inclusive and welcome. That's the fun of like having your own organization. So if you see like an awesome channel to engage people, you can create it and facilitate it. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it comes back again. So we do have an alumni council, and actually we're bringing that back this quarter, restarting it. So actually, as a former GG volunteer, even once, you are technically an alumna. So I'm going to have Christina and Nikita follow up with you.
Okay. Yeah.
And so look out. But we also have our advisory council, 20 years later, that's still going strong. And that's a diverse breadth of individuals who are across all different industries, who provide, advice, resources, and network to the organization. We also have activations like My Dear Friend. Right now, we have our Valentine's Day campaign happening, and anyone can write a My Dear Friend card. So your involvement can start with literally, signing up and getting a free downloadable card from us, writing it and sending it off to that senior home that we match you with. Or it's bringing it to your place of work and saying, oh, the internship program, or, oh, you know what? We need a service event for my team. Or, there's so many different opportunities to bring it into your professional life, as well as, we host a whole bunch of events, especially in New York City, but sometimes around the country, opportunities to come to awareness building events, fundraising events, or even service events.
I know that Glamour Girls is, their specific focus is the makeovers and the connection at the senior homes, but you also do like the leadership events, which I got to go to, which was absolutely amazing, by the way. And then you do like scholarship awards. So can you talk a little bit more about what else Glamour Girls provides and does for the community?
Well, you pretty much started to share our leadership model, which is training, mentorship, and recognition. So if you think about intergenerational service through the lens of the support system of a leadership training program. So you might want to start a chapter or be part of a Glamour Girls chapter in high school or college, which is great. But then we don't just like leave you there. We say, great, we know that volunteering can be challenging, can be, new for people. It's all new people, new experiences, new skills to develop. So we say, great, we're also going to bring you this great support system to make you such a success that at the end of the year, we want to recognize you with an intergenerational service award that can unlock recommendation letters, LinkedIn references, scholarship opportunities, and go one step further and say, you know what, sometimes because you needed an after school job, but instead you chose to volunteer with GlamourGals after school, here is the opportunity to earn a GlamourGals scholarship to college. And we even have a relationship with the university, St. Peter's University, that preserves one full ride to school. Yes, full ride for a GlamourGals volunteer. Now you have to, get a certain GPA. But what I see that as is service as the great equalizer. Like, you try to get a sports scholarship, there's only one captain of the tennis team, whereas anyone can be a GlamourGals volunteer. And if you achieve academically within that framework, you can use service to go to college for free.
What skills do you feel like you are providing them through this training?
I would definitely say communication skills, the conversations they have with another generation, or convincing their friends to try something new. So there's communication, there's organization. You have to call up that senior home and organize a schedule. You have to fill out supply requests or service reports. So it's learning the importance of organization and getting the resources you need. So it's not that we're saying, go find all the materials you need. No, we have that. You just have to request it on time and then follow through with it. And as long as those skills are organized, we provide you with all the materials you need. And the third is creative problem solving. I'm go back to that idea of entrepreneurship. Yes, at GG National, Rachel, the leader, is always like in the thick of it with the challenges and figuring that out. But then as a volunteer running your own chapter, we really try to give you the baseline or the platform and the tools, but then for you to bring your own creativity to that. So we even have something called the Chapter Creativity Fund, where you have an idea to bring a special event to the senior home. You have to apply for the funding on our site, but you just share your idea, share your budget. If we think it's okay, we approve it, and then we give you all the resources to execute that idea.
Awesome. So what do you feel is good advice for, these teen volunteers and young adults who are looking to continue out their purpose of, making a difference and touch on social issues? What advice can you give them on following through with that?
I recently heard an interview with former President Obama. And he was like, be the person in the room who gets stuff done. And I was like, we are spirit people. That is exactly what I say to people all the time. I was like, you stole my line. But he said it somewhere, so I got to give him credit for it.
Right.
I completely agree. Be the person in the room who gets stuff done. Paraphrasing from him, there's plenty of people in the room who are going to tell you why it's wrong. What is the problem? What is the challenge? They'll give you a 10-point PowerPoint presentation on like all the things that will be like, this is why we can't do it. And you're going to be that breath of fresh air in a room, be it if you're starting something new, if you're trying to stand out to a superior, like a boss or a teacher, and you're going to be the person who's like, oh, I got this. Let me get back to you. Or let me research that. Or can I take this on? Or I have the answer. And all those words, if I tell you, those are like, it brings like a rush of adrenaline and happiness and euphoria to people leading, because they're like, oh, you just made my life so much easier today because you took that off my plate proactively. Because at the end of the day, it all will stop with the leader. So if you're the leader, or if you're the person hoping to be the leader one day, if you can start aspiring and walking through those motions of like those techniques and the things that make that person successful and start just taking those actions for yourself, you'll get there quicker than I did.
All right, so changing gears a little bit, what do you like to do in your free time?
Um, I love to travel. I love baking. I make a mean chocolate chip cookie. My family is the number one request, chocolate chip
Okay.
cookies. And oh, I am one of those person who goes down the rabbit hole of watching like an entire season of a show in like one day. I think I once
That's
watched Game
impressive.
of Thrones in like 1 week, like all 10 seasons. People
Oh,
were like,
wow.
when did you do that? I'm like, I don't think I slept that week. I think I like between 11 p.m. and 4 a.m. I just watched Game of Thrones. Like,
Wow.
did it.
I love that.
I just, yeah, those are probably like my guilty pleasures because usually
Yeah.
free time is like working mom outside the home. You don't get much of that these
Yeah.
days.
Well,
Yeah.
if you need a recommendation, and the Obamas actually executive produced this. It's
This
called
Rustin.
Rustin. Yeah. Go ahead and check it out. You might see a familiar face, but not only because of that, it's just an amazing story. So,
Wait, was that the documentary you were in? Literally, see, this is why I love my
the
mom. Last
biopic,
night
yep.
she's like, Rachel, have you watched Rustin? And I'm like, I'll put it on my list. Documentaries, also like You Are What You Eat. I got it.
Yeah,
Those two
it's a
things.
biopic though, so it's not documentary if you don't like that. It's like, we're like telling the story
Oh,
of
so
him.
is there like reenactments
Yeah,
kind
it's
of?
like a whole, it's yep.
And that's the one you're in, right? Oh, she's gonna
Yeah.
be so excited when I call her up and be like, you know who's in that? You met her, by the way. So, oh my God, this is
Yeah.
great.
So yeah, a
Absolutely. You're the second
little
person to tell me that this week. I will watch it tonight.
My last question, because it's still we're still fresh into 2024, and the trend has been 2024 beauty ins and outs. So I would love to know your 2024 beauty ins and outs of this year. If you
Okay. So, what's in? All right, what's out? I
have,
think things that don't make you feel good.
yeah.
And that's super broad, but I'm going to leave it as that because I'm usually a positive person. So, what's
Absolutely.
in is whatever makes you feel beautiful. And if that means experimenting with colors and heavy makeup, you go for it. Always having like the perfect mascara, or even before a podcast or an interview like this, being like, could I take 3 minutes to touch up? Like, not being shamed for that. And definitely what's in is washing your face at night. Like,
Come on now.
somebody who doesn't like a schedule of things, like if it gets too repetitive, I get bored type of thing. I'm like, I feel like I need to post it on my mirror that says, Rachel, just wash your face.
Wash
It's
it, just do
good for you.
it.
You will thank yourself.
You will.
It's
You
the
absolutely.
minimum you could do. Wash your face.
Absolutely. Yes, I love it. Well, Rachel, it has been a pleasure chatting with you and learning more about Glamour Girls and your process. Truly inspiring. I feel like I have a lot of tips, and the beauties have a lot of tips on how to pursue their dreams, their goals, and, future businesses. So it was wonderful talking to you. Any last advice you want to share with the beauties?
I think just don't be afraid to say yes to things. At this time in your life, I think that it's the time for you all to say yes and try it and be great at it, or be absolutely awful and, learn something.
Thank you once again. Thank you, beauties, for tuning in. I'm going to link, Glamour Gals and the My Dear Friend initiative and all of that in the video and in the comments. So be sure to check it out. Thank you. Bye.